I'm also the director and founder of Clearwax. Clearwax are the manufacturers of the wireless iClearScope endoscope, which is the device that we're using at the moment to visualize the ear and to perform the procedure. We also train ear professionals internationally in endoscopic ear care. And if you're based in the UK and you have a blocked ear, please do visit our website www.clearwax.co.uk and you can find your nearest Clearwax earwax removal specialist. This client attended around a month ago. He was referred from his GP. He was initially diagnosed with impacted earwax in his left ear by his GP. However, upon closer inspection, it became obvious to me that the patient didn't have earwax, but instead he had a fungal infection of the outer ear canal. So it's a fungal otitis externa. Otitis externa is an umbrella term used to define any infection or inflammation of the outer ear canal. So with this patient, you can see there's a lot of dead skin that's coating his ear canal, and it's actually occluded his eardrum as well. So this skin, dead skin, extends all the way from the entrance of his ear canal all the way onto his eardrum, and there's a thick layer of this over his eardrum. Obviously at the end of the video we did remove all of this. It's a very tedious procedure in the sense where when you're peeling skin it can take a while, because you're having to literally peel it segment by segment, unlike with wax where you can suck onto a large lump of wax and it comes out in a big mass. With skin it tears as you peel it, so you have to go back and get another layer. You can always compare it to, so if just say you've got a cardboard box and you've got an old delivery sticker on there and you're trying to peel the sticker off and you peel it and it shreds off in little, and it tears away in little pieces. It's similar to that, so it's very tedious in that respect. And of course we have to be very gentle because we are peeling skin directly off the ear canal. The outer third of the ear canal is semi-flexible and therefore semi-sensitive. It's made up of cartilage and some muscles and fatty tissue. So if you do come in contact with the outer third of the ear canal, although the patient can feel it, it's not going to be excruciatingly painful for them. However, the inner 2/3 of the ear canal is a very thin layer of skin, approximately 0.1 millimeters in thickness, and that's directly coating the bony part of the ear canal. So if you do make contact with the bony part of the ear canal, believe you me, it's very uncomfortable and very sensitive for the patient. So at the end of the procedure, you will be able to see the eardrum, and what was interesting was that the patient had a second ear pathology. He also had acute otitis media with effusion, and that can be simply called glue ear. We wouldn't have known that until we removed all this dead skin and debris from the ear canal. I'm going to let you watch for a couple of minutes because there's not much more I can really talk about, because with this procedure it's just me peeling skin off. So I'll let you enjoy. I know these type of videos do appeal to a lot of people. A lot of people enjoy watching the skin peels, especially if they're infected. So I will come back a bit later on in the video. Just thought I'd mention as well, sometimes when you've got dead skin you can put some drops in the ears to loosen the skin, make it damp. However, in this particular case I was very reluctant to use drops if at all possible, and that's because the patient has got obviously otitis externa, outer ear infection. If you're going to use drops for dead skin, the best type of drops is sodium bicarbonate drops, which is slightly alkaline and water based. When your ear is infected, when you've got an outer ear infection, the pH level of your ear is actually alkaline, whereas the natural pH of your ear canal should be slightly acidic, and it's the acidity that can help repel and inhibit certain bacterial growth to prevent an ear infection. So with the sodium bicarbonate drops, because it's alkaline based, you're kind of almost giving rise for this infection to almost continue to develop. So that's why I didn't use sodium bicarbonate drops. Olive oil doesn't really work that well with dead skin. In addition, sodium bicarbonate drops, or any type of hydrogen peroxide drops, they're actually water-based as well, and the water itself can also cause infection. So that's the reason why I persisted using just dry suction. I know in America they still use dry mopping quite a lot. Dry mopping is a technique where you get some cotton wool, you attach it to the end of an ear carrette, so a Jobson horn or even an ear hook where they've got a serrated tip. You then put the cotton wool into the ear and you spin this cotton wool around and it collects any debris. It's really fallen out of favour in the UK, and for the very simple reason, we advise people not to use cotton buds or Q-tips, not only because you risk pushing and impacting the wax further in the ear canal, but you also risk grazing the outer layer of skin cells on the ear canal itself. And those skin cells, the epithelial cells, they're the cells, as they die, they shed and migrate out of the ear like a conveyor belt. And it's that conveyor belt motion which is very important because it serves a cleaning mechanism. When the skin cells shed and migrate and move sideways out of the ear, they take with it any earwax that's developed on top of the dead skin. So underneath this dead layer of epithelium skin cells, you've got a fresh layer of skin cells that are healthy and intact. So by going in there and spinning it, you're going to be grazing, causing damage to these skin cells. So in the UK, at least, obviously every country is different, but in the UK it has really fallen out of favour. In the UK, we try to use a suction or other instruments, even if it takes a bit longer and it's a bit more tedious. We just find that works better. I'm sure there's some specialists in the UK that still use dry mopping, and that's fine. It's just I think more people don't than do in the UK for that particular reason. So we're on the eardrum now, and if you've been watching my videos long enough, people would realise I really enjoy working very close to the eardrum. It's just that extra adrenaline rush, because you really do have to have a delicate, steady and gentle hand. And what we're trying to do is just peel this dead skin gently off the eardrum. Remember, the patient is awake. We haven't provided the patient with any local or general anaesthetic, and the eardrum is about 1 millimetre in thickness, and if you do make contact with the eardrum is quite robust. I know it's only 1 millimetre thick. However, at the same time, it's quite fibrous. It's got some muscle fibres in the main body of the eardrum called the pars tensa. So the top part of the eardrum, near the attic, so the superior part, that's called the pars flaccida, and that's a thinning of the eardrum. That's very thin and mobile and flexible, whereas the main body of the eardrum is called the pars tensa, and you have got some concentric muscle fibres there which give some robustness to the eardrum. But yeah, of course, if we go in gung-ho with a sharp object like a fine engorge, you run the risk of puncturing and perforating the eardrum and causing pain to the patient. So just removed a big piece of dead skin. Now that is the eardrum, believe it or not. You can see it's very red. You can't see your usual landmarks. So when you look at a healthy eardrum, the eardrum should be translucent, so you should be able to see slightly through the eardrum into the middle ear. You should see the hammer bone, what we call the handle of malleus, and sometimes you can also see the incus, which is the anvil. Not always, but sometimes you can see that. Also, with a healthy eardrum, you tend to get what we call a light reflex. So when you examine the ear, obviously you're introducing some sort of light source to illuminate the ear canals, otherwise it's very dark in there. And with a healthy eardrum, you get a reflection of light back from that light source, whether it's an otoscope or an endoscope, which is what we're using for this procedure. And that eardrum is very dull. There's no light reflex coming back. And you can just see it's very red and very inflamed. So after I finished the procedure, I did perform a test called tympanometry. Tympanometry assesses the mobility of your middle ear. So the middle ear is made up of the eardrum and the 3 tiny bones, the smallest bones in the body, the anvil, the hammer, anvil and stirrup, what is medically known as the malleus, incus and stapes, and the middle ear also encompasses the eustachian tube, which is a narrow tube that connects the back of the nose. So when sounds enter the ear canal, they arrive at the eardrum, and the sound waves, the sound pressure, causes the eardrum to vibrate, and these vibrations are transmitted through the 3 middle ear bones. And the last bone, called the stirrup, is connected to the organ of hearing. And when these vibrations travel through the bones, through the stirrup, which is attached to the organ of hearing, it stimulates the organ of hearing and tiny little hair cells, what we call outer hair cells. When these outer hair cells are stimulated, they vibrate and they produce an electrical signal, which is then sent to the brain by the auditory nerve, which is the 8th nerve, and our brain then processes that as sound. So the middle ear is very important part of that hearing pathway, and ideally we want the middle ear to be full of air, and we want the air pressure behind the eardrum to be equal to the air pressure in the atmosphere. And it's the eustachian tube that regulates the air pressure. So the eustachian tube is typically closed under normal ambient conditions. So day to day, as I'm talking at the moment to you, that eustachian tube is shut. However, during brief moments of yawning or chewing or eating, that eustachian tube opens up momentarily, and it allows the air pressure to be equalized behind the eardrum. So if there's not enough air behind the eardrum, when that eustachian tube opens, air passes up it. Or if there's excessive air, so if you're blowing your nose, for example, and there's too much air behind your eardrum and your eardrum becomes inflated, when the eustachian tube momentarily opens, air escapes, so it tries to equalize it. In some people, however, that eustachian tube can get blocked. It can get blocked if you've got any sort of nasal congestion at the back of the nose. Sometimes it can be that your eustachian tube is just anatomically narrow. You're born with a narrow eustachian tube, so it doesn't open up as well, or the muscles that contract in order to open up the eustachian tube are weak and they're not functioning well. When that eustachian tube doesn't voluntarily open during those brief moments of yawning or chewing or eating, there's negative air pressure behind the eardrum. There's no air behind the eardrum, so the eardrum, it creates a vacuum. So vacuum effect. The eardrum gets sucked in, and you feel like you're on an aeroplane. You feel like popping your ears. So quite often you close your mouth, pinch your nose and blow, and you physically force air up your nostrils, up your eustachian tube to pop the eardrum back out. But in some people, they still can't do that, and the eustachian tube is permanently blocked. And eventually, when you've got a blocked eustachian tube, your eardrum becomes retracted, it gets sucked in, it buckles inwards because there's a vacuum behind your eardrum, and then fluid that leaks from the cells in the middle ear, so the middle ear mucosa, which is rich in blood vessels and supplies blood to the middle ear structures. Fluid starts oozing out, it gets compressed out of the middle ear cells. And typically that fluid would obviously just drain out of the middle ear via the eustachian tube to the back of the nose. However, that eustachian tube is blocked, so think about it like a blocked drain pipe. Eventually that fluid is going to build up and build up and build up, and then that fluid will get infected, and when it becomes infected it becomes like a glue-like substance, hence the name glue ear. And if that glue ear doesn't resolve and it continues to fill up, obviously at that stage the eardrum's not going to vibrate because you've got this glue-like substance behind that. You've got water, sound doesn't conduct well through water. Eventually that fluid, that glue, will have to go somewhere, and it ruptures, it punctures through your eardrum and it weeps out your ear like in a discharge. So tympanometry is a middle ear assessment test. We play a sound and we change the air pressure in your ear, and we actually assess how well your eardrum is vibrating by measuring how much of that sound that we amplified in your ear bounces back off the eardrum. So this tympanometer also has a microphone attached, and it can measure how much sound is reflected back from the eardrum. The more sound that is reflected back from the eardrum means less sound obviously is being transmitted through the eardrum, meaning that they've got a problem with the middle ear. The less sound that the tympanometer detects, so the less sound that is reflected back from the eardrum, it obviously means more sound is being able to travel through and conduct through the eardrum and through the bones, and that's what we want. The less sound reflects back, the more likely your eardrum is functioning fine. And we can check that at different pressure levels as well. So it does a pressure sweep. And what tympanometry, and the reason why I've explained that, guys, sorry if some people don't like that kind of technical medical explanation, is that I do have a lot of viewers who are medical students and audiology students, and I often get a lot of emails and messages asking for me to explain some of these concepts in my videos. So I'm trying to appeal to everyone when I make these videos. So yeah, this patient, when we did tympanometry, a lot of the sound that we amplified into the ear bounced back out of the ear. We detected that, which tells us that obviously his middle ear is not performing well and it's got fluid behind the eardrum. So that was the procedure complete. We got as much dead skin out of the ear as we possibly could in a safe and comfortable manner for the patient. We referred the patient back to the GP,